Whoa!
You see how flighty he is? I'm not into them, just confused. But in here.
Oh, whoa.
Taiwan racers.
Oh, hey YouTube, it's Andrew from Snakeworks. This week we are traveling to my friend Evan K's exotic facility. Evan is a very impressive keeper with over 30 years of reptile keeping experience. He has a wild collection of red-tailed boas, children's pythons, diamond pythons, ball pythons, Argentine boas, and more. You're gonna see a ton of surprises in this video and a lot of things you probably didn't even know existed. If you wanna get in touch with Evan, I put his contact info in the description of this video. He's on Facebook and YouTube, so you know what to do with that. Please like, follow, and share Evan K at EK Exotics. He has an incredible show lined up for us. So let's head over there now and check it out.
What was it, like 6-8 months ago? I was like, hey, middle-aged American, lonely male, you want to hang out? Come on over. 6-8 months later, here he is.
Yeah, here we are. We're at Evan K's amazing facility in Maine. He's a friend of mine, and he has some amazing boas and pythons that we're going to be taking a look at.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you over here. You're being a little kind. It's not so much a facility as a bedroom. But yeah, my name's Evan Kumagai. Online on YouTube and on Facebook, I'm Evan K, K-A-Y. So I have some amateur content on there, and I have a lot of boas that I really like and some Australian pythons and things. I hope you guys would like to see them. So,
all right,
welcome.
Let's take a look. Banned from YouTube for that.
These are all Guyana true red-tailed babies. They're produced here in November, early November. And so they're now 3 months old or so. The difference between these and like what you'll find at a pet store, what they call like a pet store boa or a boa imperador, is these are boa constrictor, also referred to as like BC, boa constrictor. Back in the day, that was the dominant species, meaning that was the archetype of the boa constrictor complex, and then there were subspecies under that. One of those being the most common one, the imperador boas, which is what all morph boas are. But they got separated due to science and genetic testing. These are different in that they get larger, they grow more slowly, they are generally more temperamentally nervous. They will generally have red tails that stay redder into adulthood, and they're known for having peaks. So there's quite a bit of variability. I'll pick them up and show them to you if you want to.
Sure.
You want to see one? Here.
Absolutely.
So one thing I tell people about all these boas is they are very bite adverse in that they have a very good defensive display, but they don't actually really want to bite you. They're very unlikely to bite you in reality. But a lot of variability. This is actually a wacky one. Do you see how dark it is? And it's got those white marks. So, and then that real dark head. This is gonna be a cool animal. And then they go anything from like that down to this is a little more of a traditional. Got secondary markings on it. This peak's got a little bit of aberrancy in it.
Yeah, I like that stripe on the tail.
Yeah, this is in here. And then let's see.
Yeah, notice they're not biting, even though they look like they want it.
Not to say that they won't, but they generally don't. Another one. If you think about the psychology, they're basically just a hot dog in the woods. And the only thing that they have in terms of defense is a bluster motion. It's called dymatic behavior in animals. It means that they are trying to startle you, but they really don't have much way to actually defend.
Gotcha.
And in general, I think most boas are hissy as babies, but the true red tails are one of those species that will actually take a bite at you. Not all of them will, but part of them being at the top of the boa constrictor genus. God, I started these on live mice, and this one got bitten. So,
yeah, it stinks.
Yeah, it stinks. You know, I feed this collection almost exclusively frozen thawed, except babies. I'll usually give them 1 or 2 live meals. Sometimes I get them up and over if they refuse. But yeah, that's a legitimate risk. Not to say I'm against feeding live, but that is a legitimate risk.
Oh yeah.
Some people get a $50 discount on that. This is Connie. Connie is an adult Guyana locality true red-tailed boa. So a lot of my collection are what are called locality boa constrictors, meaning boas from different countries or areas of South America. So these are what they call the true red-tailed boas. You tell me if I need to do something different. Like she is still very skinny from giving birth back in November. She's about half the weight she would be before breeding. So one thing I tell people about boa constrictors is they're capital breeders, meaning that the energy that they put into the babies is primarily there before they get pregnant. So they have to have a certain amount of condition. So she's getting the year off, and she'll probably get repaired again in probably another 2 years. But that was her third litter. She was a great snake. But you can see how skinny she is still like there.
Yeah, still looks like a very strong snake.
Yeah, I mean, even when they're this thin, they're very strong. They're known for being squeezy. You know, that's what people say. They just hold on. She's almost 8 foot.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I love the true red-tailed boas. They're kind of the superlative boa when people are talking about South American boa constrictors. But I love all the boa constrictors, and so I think that they're all great. And you know, if you want a full-size boa constrictor that you have to pay a little more attention to its care parameters and things like that, these guys are great. They're also a little more nervous, a little more of a handful. I don't know if you can see, but they just do this type of stuff. But their temperaments, they're generally not aggressive, but she's a very chill true red-tailed boa. I'd say that the temperaments usually go from on the good end like this, all the way up to most of them are a little more nervous or flighty than this, and then I have a couple that I call straight anxiety cases. But they are wonderful pets for the right people, but there are also other boas that are better pets for most people. And that's just one thing I tell people is when we're talking about animals and species and people like these things that are really impressive, there's also a yin to the yang, and some of those things make them not quite as appropriate captives. But for somebody who's experienced with the ball python, could do well with the ball python for a couple of years and was willing to give them the space and the time and invest in what they needed, they'd be totally reasonable to go for. So yeah, they're fun. They're my first boas that I got into, and first thing I ever bred, and they're still the bee's knees for me.
All right.
So I showed you some examples of really classic true red-tailed boas, and I want to show you the opposite of that. This is a male I produced, and he is just one of the more nervous animals. I'm not going to try to fire him up, but he is what I would call almost unhandleable, in that he will flail around to the point of his own detriment.
That's too bad. Look at that stripe on him.
Yeah.
The looker.
Yeah. He looks better than his personality, but
wow.
So this is a 2-year-old, but do you see how just hyper defensive he is, and he's going to explode at some point. But he's being,
it's always the pretty ones.
yeah, but he's being pretty well behaved, but they're hyper nervous.
Whoa!
You see how flighty he is?
Oh.
So they're just almost unhandleable. It's like almost to their detriment. But also, that's how you tend to him with this deep litter. He'll spend most of his time in there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. He's so nervous even with all that place that he has
Right.
to feel secure.
But yeah, so they're just,
wow.
but you just see how dynamic he is. My line at Guyana produces these stripes quite often.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That's just an example of like, you see they get super flighty.
Just waiting to get bit by this thing.
Yeah, she will smoke your ass. It's so bad. Like, there's a 50% chance I'm gonna get bitten doing this.
All right, Evan, what do we have here?
So right here we have a very food reactive pure diamond python. So these are, they are one of the complex Australian pythons. They're a cooler weather temperate animal. Known to have this gorgeous kind of yellow coloration under that velvet black. Similar to or to carpet pythons in general, but a little bit different. Most closely related to Breedley or Bradel's python.
All right. How old is this animal?
She's going on 3 or 4. She's produced by Josh Easter.
Okay, Josh Easter, a good friend up in Maine.
Yeah, I didn't actually realize how how big of a diamond python producer he is, but I think he's one of the people that's been playing with them longer than most, and known about these since I was a child, and had the opportunity to own one, so now I do.
All right. But you think that's for everybody, or when do you get one of these?
You get one of these when you learn how to handle a little bit more of a squirrely snake. She's a beautiful animal. She's not aggressive. She's just incredibly food reactive. I like to joke that on top of being beautiful, she's got one of the most predictable and reliable temperaments ever. Meaning, if you give her the chance, she will predictably and reliably bite and food wrap you. So,
nice.
They're great animals. They're not aggressive, but they are, in my experience, I don't think they're all this way, but she's pretty food reactive, and that's just kind of a feature of the Australian pythons. But if you give them a chance, they will bite you.
All right, so not for the beginner.
I mean, unless you want to get bit, but I get bit too, so a little bit of experience doesn't help you that much. But
so what do we have here?
These are children's pythons, so they're one of my favorite species. The genus Antaresia, it's a genus of 4 small Australian pythons. They're all pretty hardy. These are the second smallest python species in the world, and they stay about the size of a garter snake. This is a gravid, proven female. She's going to lay more eggs this year. I don't know if you can see, but she's swollen eggs. They're wicked easy to keep. If you have ball pythons, you can keep them in the same rack. They're a great option for breeding also because they're relatively easy to breed. I maternally incubate the eggs. The only hard part is getting the babies feeding. If you're going to buy one, make sure you get them feeding on rodents because they're lizard obligate feeders. But they are just a small, spicy little snake. But,
yeah, that's a tiny little worm right there.
Yeah, and these are 6-8 months old. You know, they're like.
No kidding. All right, so that's not right out of the egg or anything right there.
No.
6-8 months old.
But yeah, and they're wicked hardy. They can handle cool temperatures in the evening, as long as they get a warm spot during the day.
And this is an adult one right here.
This is an adult. She's gravid. That's as big as they get. So. Yeah, they are a good step-up species if you want to get into something more reactive, like any of the jungle python, carpet python. I call them jungle pythons. I don't know why. Or like womas or retics or anything that's more food reactive. These are good training. But the only thing is, babies, keep them in vertebrate like tarantula boxes. Don't keep them in a normal snake cage because they can get out of them.
Okay, they're so small they'll get out.
Right, but that's the only thing. These are big tarantula boxes. So. In this tub, I have boa constrictor longicauda or Peruvian longtail boas. I think they might now be called part of the imperator complex, but this is a good example of how I'd set up boas in the winter. And if you think about it, in the winter time, you need to put more moisture in the ground to actually, because you cannot hold as much moisture in the air because it's cooler. But it makes them pretty hard to find. There we go.
Oh,
But
wow.
people talk about coconut chunk being a great substrate. They're like, it's more natural. I think bullshit. This is more natural. This is a mixture of compost and isopods and decomposed leaf litter. So tell me that just sensorily, if you have coconut chunk in there, it does not have the same type of friction and resistance that this does. This is just, I'm not saying coconut chunk is bad. I keep them on that, especially in the summer because it's easier to manage, but put your stuff on something more of a living soil and change your world and change theirs. These are a good smaller species of boas. This is about a 4 or 5 year old male, ready to breed. They're called the ugly ducklings of the boa world, the boa longicaudas, the Peruvian longtail boas, because they start off pretty plain and some of them get this really bold markings like this, and they get these really dark head spears. That's something you associate with them. There's an anery morph in these, so there's some that don't have any of that red, so they get very black and white like a newspaper. It's pretty wild. But they're also highly variable. I can pull out a female and show you.
Sure.
We're in high risk of getting food wrap today because I haven't fed anything in a month. So this is the same species, but you can see they're just very different. And the wildest thing about these two is there's one day when I went in to service these when they're like 2 years old, and I thought I had switched the snakes in this cage because there was just like a week where their appearances changed so much. They both shed, and I thought that they had switched places.
No kidding, yeah. Because they're wildly different looking animals.
Right, but You know, and then if you look at these, they're highly variable. There's a couple morphs in these. If you're into morphs, there's also one called the zero morph, which is like, it's hard, how do I describe it? It like removes most of the pattern and turns it into a big reverse stripe. And then there's the anery without the reds in them. But yeah, these are probably in my collection. If you're wanting to get into boas, probably the most friendly starting off point. In that they're small. These are adults, or close to adults.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those guys stay pretty small.
And they're temperamentally very calm. They are hardy. Yeah, just easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, in this rack, I have one of the rarest ball pythons in America. Right here, we have an F1, het for nothing, wild type ball python. They're a lot of fun. This is a good example of me using isopods in the cage too. I don't know if you can see them over here, but right in here.
Oh yeah, I see him running around.
Yeah, so watch out. He will bite you. That's one thing that people don't realize about snakes in general is we are domesticating them. I have a lot of F1 species, and I shouldn't say a lot, but I have a handful of F1s of common species that are very heavily captive bred. And the difference between this animal and a multiple generation captive bred ball python is just wild behaviorally. And I have a corn snake that's F1, and they're just completely different animals. But
now, what does the F1 mean?
F1 mean that they're the first captive generation. So I believe that's right. Is that right, Andrew? I don't know.
That's what I've always thought.
Yeah, F1. So you bring in imported bring in imported animals, and they breed, and the offspring are F1. So that's what this is. Glad I know what that means. But I don't know. People are funny with their ball pythons. I've shown this to a bunch of different people, and they're like, oh, it's a morph for something. And I see something in it. I don't know. Maybe all morphs came out of the wild, but it's a damn pretty animal in my book.
Yeah, well, it has a lot of just that lateral stripe and the symmetry that goes. I think a lot of the stuff that I have that would look like that would be like het clown.
Okay, yeah.
So you never know what's lurking in there.
Yeah, and
it could just be like a nice, pretty example.
Right, and that's all it will be as far as I know, because it's I'm not going to breed it. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean that neck, all that connectivity right there, it's pretty amazing. You can see why these things became so popular.
Yeah, I mean, when I started keeping ball pythons, have I ever told you this? That they had a big, like 6 foot tall enclosure with a incandescent light bulb burning away in it, and they had ball pythons hugging on that light shroud. And they had a big sign that said, ball pythons guaranteed to feed or will exchange. So that's like one of the things I tell people is like, I don't think ball pythons are actually that easy to keep. Like people are like, oh, they're good beginner snakes. And they're not so much that, is that we've just figured out how to do that with them. Right. And the point I make is a lot of these animals that seem higher order, and they are in a lot of ways, but it's just more that that's where herpetoculture is in terms of figuring out how to keep them. And so we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. Other people figured out how to breed ball pythons and perpetuate them. That's how we got there. Other people figured out these boa constrictors for me, and that's how I got here. And hopefully I'm putting something together positive for the future as well.
Now, before you put this away, I noticed that little copper piece in your water bowl, your extremely clean water bowl. What's the copper do?
The copper, I don't know, I've just started playing with them. It's supposed to release copper ions, which inhibit bacterial growth and biofilm. So I'm actually a little experiment. I'm actually on day 4 with this water change. And I kind of did notice that they're staying clean, but I don't know. I'm too early in it to say it, but there's enough people that do it and say that it works to give it a try. So
all right.
There you go. Maybe I'll pull out a sub-adult because it's a little more of a fight. So in here I have a sub-adult, like 2 or 3 year old, closer to 2, female boa constrictor occidentalis, an Argentine boa. And she's more of a wild type. I'm pulling her out to give you this. And this is a weaver.
Oh wow.
And so
pattern on that.
They have this kind of lace-like pattern, and anywhere from white to kind of a gold or a bronze. So.
Of course, these originate from Argentina.
Yep, the Gran Chaco, the Chaco Seco, which is, I like to tell people, it's kind of like Southern California weather. It gets warm in the days, but it can get quite cool at night. So a big difference between these and the true red-tailed boas is that they can handle a night drop, and they don't need it as humid. So I don't know if you can tell the difference, but all these cages in here have Argentine boas in them. And if you can tell, I just have a 12-12 halogen light for warmth. And then I have a heat mat on 24/7, which is different than the true red tails. So I'll have them with a radiant heat panel and keep them much warmer. But actually this room gets down into the mid-60s at night.
Oh, wow.
So this is actually a really important thing with larger constrictors. I tell people is that the way to get really badly bitten, meaning bitten and wrapped, is for a food wrap. It's a case of mistaken identity. So kind of like with venomous snakes, don't ever open your cage with your hand. That's a good rule of thumb with the larger constrictors, especially the Boa occidentalis, the Argentines. They're very food responsive in the cage, but they're complete puppy dogs outside. So let's see what I can do in here for you in the show. So this is the male. That's the female. So let's see. She's starting to swell, building follicles, which is kind of cool. But
Wow. Now, let me spin around here so the light is hitting you. Yeah.
so one thing you'll notice about her, she's got quite a bit more red than the last one I pulled out. And this is a line bred line called Max Pink from a company called Ancient Reproduction, which is Bob Guerriere down in Florida. He's probably the godfather of Argentine boas in America. And he selectively bred this red into him. So it's not a morph, it's polygenic, meaning that through extra generations, he has bred this into them. So it's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I need to pull this anyways because she shed last week. So the only thing that makes these harder than a regular boa constrictor to keep is that they tend to stay up high rather than be down low. So they're a little more prone to having humidity issues for shedding. And one thing that I like to do is just stick they do this really unnerving thing where they look like they're going to bite you, but they usually don't. How do I say this? A lot of times when they're shedding, I'll take a wad of wet moss and like stick it up on their perch so they kind of tend to stick on it.
Okay.
But these are Amazon tree boas, Corallus hortulanus, and they are what most people who want emerald tree boas or green tree pythons should be getting. And they're just a much more forgiving, easy, manageable arboreal snake. Their care parameters are like vertically oriented boa constrictors because they're Amazonian. So if you think about that, it's just the same as boa constrictors, right? So that's how I have them set up in gecko cages, basically. And people say that they're bitey, but I've never been bitten by any of mine. They are food reactive, meaning if you run your hand in front of them enough, because they're primarily bird eaters, if you fluttered your hands around in front of them enough, they'd probably bite you, especially at night. But in general, if you can understand their umwelt, is that they're motion reactive, they're pretty mellow.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to put my hand in front of that thing. It just seemed way too attentive to both of us.
They're hyper motion reactive, you know, but they're not super bitey. The other thing is they come in wild caught all the time and sick and distressed. Mm-hmm. So seeking out captive bred ones. But this is a garden phase, meaning that this is kind of the typical drab wild type. I love them. I think they're pretty cool. But there's more golds and things. Lots of bright reds, bright yellows, bright oranges. I have some babies in here. But arborealistics in general are look but don't touch. They're less interactive. I keep them in bioactive setups. You know, one of the reasons it's fine to pull this out is I haven't pulled it apart in a few months. It's pulled a little bit of dead shit. There's some old feces and things, but they're really fun animals. A lot of fun. This animal's incredibly long too for how much it weighs. It's probably 6 feet long.
Oh wow.
But
yeah, she's really wrapped around that.
Yeah. You should, in general, you should never try to force them off. Sometimes they're a little more manageable to get off than others. But I tend to move them and manipulate them on perches and things.
How much do you think something like that would go for?
Like price?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're one of those things where like the designer color jobs are probably in. I can see. I don't know. There's some morphs. I'm not into them. Just.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you little punk. But I've seen some of like the morphs, they go up into the low 1,000s, but a garden phase like this, captive bred, a couple $100. You could find this sick and half dead on a flesh peddler's table for 50. But if you do that, screw you.
Yeah, exactly.
Buy one for a couple $100 for a garden phase from a breeder. They're usually, people are happy to get them. I like them, but they tend not to sell as much, so you can get them lower value. And you can get into some nice, brightly colored ones, probably in the $500 range. So,
all right, something to look out for.
Yeah. Oh, whoa. Taiwan racers. So here's one of those things that I just keep that's a little personal interest, not something. This is where I'm a developing keeper, but this is a Taiwan beauty or Taiwan beauty rat snake. They are Southeast Asian, part of that complex, like cave dwelling, Vietnamese blue beauties, things like that. They're like 6-7 feet adults, highly arboreal. Unfortunately, I put it back in a rack because I had a little vision cage, and I came in one day and it was halfway out of the sliding vent. So I was like, "Oh, you need some size on you." So, but they should be set up arboreally. That's a better option for them. But cool little animal.
Yeah,
very fast,
wiry creature.
Just very slingy little animal.
Well, how about that? I hope you enjoyed that video half as much as I enjoyed visiting Evan and his animals. As a reminder, his social media contacts are in the description of this video. And some of those baby boas are available, so feel free to reach out to Evan if you're interested. If you'd like to see anything more on this channel, let me know. Give me some feedback on this video in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching. Take care.